Well, I wanted to ask you, what are your opinions about de-dollarization? I love to ask people, especially like people like you who know about this, like, is there going to be an inflection point, and what are the potential consequences for the dollar if the US keeps increasing debt levels at the speed that it is now, and countries, even slowly migrate to other currencies?
Well, I mean, people have been talking about de-dollarization for decades, but the real big inflection point, I think, was the sanction, the Russian sanction, because
Mm.
prior to that, like everybody knows there's a need to move away from the dollar, but it's just so convenient because it's accepted everywhere. Hello, that's my son just came in. I have to say hello. Uh,
Hi.
eh, hello, hello, Papa working okay? And so it, uh, come on, go. I lost
My
my
cat
train
does
of
that
thought.
sometimes. So there you
Well, I lost my train of thought. We're talking about de-dollarization.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for people have realized the importance to move away from dollar for a long time, but the dollar is so convenient because you can use it everywhere. Everybody accept it. There's not the pro overweighs the cons.
Hmm.
However, with the very drastic Russian sanction, what's made people set up and take notice. Like, holy crap! Not only you can cut off a country off completely, but you actually can take their money. Then when it froze Russian asset,
And now
you
Yellen
now
wants to give that to other countries.
yes, that's robbery. That's right. I mean, they did that with Afghanistan too, by the way.
Yeah,
And
it was 9 billion, I think.
yeah, and this is quite obscene. Afghanistan, one of the poorest country in the world, and you're taking their money away. So this for Russia again. They had no choice. They had to move off the dollar platform because that's a U.S. government policy. So again, it's U.S. policy. I mean, a lot of the diplomatic setbacks that the U.S. is facing right now is mostly self-inflicted.
Mm.
Like the U.S. government policy literally pushed forward the momentum for de-dollarization, and this is when country of the BRICS said, okay, well now maybe it's time for us to talk about forming a BRICS currency, and
Right.
and this is really important because once upon a time, dollar, U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency makes sense because after World War II, U.S. is one of the few countries that was not devastated. In 1950, U.S. composed about 50% of the world GDP, and U.S. was the manufacturing power of the world, well, in a similar way that China is today. And but U.S. Wall Street type have intentionally hollow out the U.S. manufacturing capability since the 1970s, and then U.S. economy is now increasingly financialized. Again, that itself relies on the hegemony of the dollar, and and yet, all the U.S. sanctions are counterproductive to maintain the dollar
Mm.
hegemony. It forces people to think of alternatives, and there are plenty of alternatives because one of the pillar of dollar hegemony is a petrodollar. Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia back in the 70s and like, okay, let's work on the deal. U.S. will provide security. In return, you got to price your oil export in dollars. That basically force everybody to take dollars because you need dollars to purchase oil. Nowadays, Saudi Arabia's largest export market is China.
Mm.
And there's really not much compelling reason for Saudi Arabia, for example, for the Saudi-China trade to be conducted in dollars.
Right.
It could very easily be conducted in yuan because China makes all the manufacturing goods. China imports oil from Saudi Arabia, and it makes sense. You can just use the Chinese RMB to buy Chinese made goods. And this same dynamic is happening all over the world. At the same time, the U.S. is sabotaging its own dollar hegemony by slapping sanctions left and right.
Mm.
Like Marco Rubio said, in other 5 years, we won't be able to sanction anybody anymore because they won't be using dollars. But the for some reason they don't make the connection. Is like it's the sanction itself that's forcing people off the dollars.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
and it's not just Russia or it's like half dozens of countries around the world, individuals around the world, companies around the world. The United States is slowly, like you said, creating the conditions itself for individuals and companies and countries to say, well, I guess we can't use the dollar anymore because the United States made it impossible. So yeah, it definitely is contributing to that. And yeah, I would say that is a really good point. That is an inflection point with what the United States did to Russia. I wanted to ask you about the Chinese economy because, okay, forgive me if I'm wrong, but China's economy grew by 5.2% last year. And the United States economy grew by 2.5% last year. But the United States was like, woo, we've got the fastest growing economy. I'm sorry, what happened? What did I miss? Is China's economy suffering? Like, what is going on here?
this is like that meme, Jason, like the guy celebrating with his big trophy, and then you zoom out, and he was on the bottom of the ladder. That's
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
United
Yeah.
States. Yeah, that's the United States right now. And instead, in the mainstream media, we're celebrating the win of 2.5 economic growth. And finally, U.S. achieved the amazing growth under Bidenomics, while China is growing twice as fast. But China is supposedly collapsing. It's the end of the Chinese miracle. China is falling. And what people don't realize is that there is a slowdown in growth in the Chinese economy, but that's a slowdown in growth. The economy is still growing. It's just
Yeah.
not growing as fast as it before. And this is also because Chinese economy is going through transition. It's transitioning away from real estate investment growth to growth in areas like high tech manufacturing, which is actually positive in the long and medium term. And there will be some pain in the short term because of the transition, but it's actually healthy. Rather than plowing all this money and resources into build more houses. When the population is declining, it makes sense to be investing in automation, robotics, AI, etc. And China is already reaping benefits of investment into these areas. I think a lot of it is political because U.S. is facing it's another election year, and now you have all these de- uh, Democratic Party toadies, including even Paul Krugman. Paul Krugman is writing articles like, "Oh, Bidenomics is working and it's making China angry, and it's okay." So talking about China doesn't care about Bidenomics. China cares about the U.S. sanctions. That's a where area. This is one area where U.S. is still leading the world: copium production. I mean that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing like the copium production off the charts. Plus, U.S. is steadily losing its top spot in the world economy. It's sad to say because U.S. passport holder, I would rather U.S. come to grip with the reality
Mm.
and work with China, and so both countries and people in both countries can march toward prosperity together. This is what Chinese leader talk about.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping talk about the common destiny of the mankind,
Mm.
but in Washington, all they talk about is, we gotta crush these upstarts. We gotta crush Russia, China, Iran, and it's quite a stark contrast,
Mm.
between the politicians. And and but but the difference is in China, the Chinese leadership they plan for long term. They have the 5 year plans. In United States, everything is geared towards the short election cycle.
Yeah. Can I get
Because
reelected? What do I need to do right now to get elected? And that might not always even be in the best interest of the population. It's just that is what's going to get make me popular for 6 months just for the right window so I can get reelected, even if it's not necessarily the best thing for the people. I want, and it also, in terms of the Belt and Road, because I want to ask you about BRICS. In terms of the Belt and Road, China has been investing in the infrastructure, in the development of these underdeveloped world that has been left out of development, not just since World War II, but during the entire colonial phase for the last several hundred years, as the Europeans and the Americans extracted all this wealth from these places, and they literally became poorer than they were. I mean, what the UK did to India is just probably one of the most profound examples of that, but happened all over the world. And in China too, in Africa, I mean, human beings were taken and sent to other continents as slaves and so forth. But the Belt and Road is going in, it's building, bridges, it's building ports, it's building roads, it's building hospitals, it's building energy infrastructure, transition lines for electricity from everything that a country needs to really develop. And one of the things I've noticed is that while China is maintained, the number one trading partner with most European countries, and almost with the United States, and actually through the United States through Mexico, China's actual trade is increasing as a percentage is in the developing world. So as a larger percentage of China's economic growth engine, that is starting to take place in the developing world, which is gigantic. And if we're talking about the United States, like clearly they don't have a long-term strategy, like you said, because they're not doing that. They're not engaging in that same way. They're just going in and saying, you have to choose us or you have to choose China. Which one are you going to choose? And then the governments are usually like, we're not making that choice. Like, we'd rather just trade with everyone. But like, one of the things I don't understand always is BRICS. Like, BRICS is obviously working on another currency, and it does bring countries together. And a lot of people, when I point out how much I love the Belt and Road, they're like, oh, but I love BRICS. What am I missing? What does BRICS do, or what can it do to create a better multipolar world for the members and for others?
Well, first of all, BRICS is an economic alliance. It's not a security alliance like NATO, right? This BRICS is just a forum. I mean, originally BRICS was an acronym that was coined by Goldman Sachs, right? It was a marketing gimmick, but it actually come to fruition as the head of these countries actually sat down. Let's talk and let's have a forum for economic cooperation. And if you look at the countries that's looking to join BRICS, that list is expanding. Because as you mentioned, BRICS is kind of seen as a pole that's not representing the old paradigm of the Euro-American economic dominance over the world. Because what BRICS represents, it's representing the emergence of the global South countries. And one of the things it's interesting. If you talk about kind of the fear of the BRICS and fear of Belt and Road in United States. I vividly remember recent interview by Tucker Carlson, and he's saying, okay, look at all these, look at our colonies in Latin America. China is building infrastructures. Why the hell is China building roads and ports and power plant in these places? What is their real true motive?
China has massive influence within our hemisphere. Go to any island in the Caribbean, including the American colonies there. We call them protectorates or some of their colonies. St. Croix, Virgin Islands, for example. All the infrastructure in St. Croix was built by China. What? Why would China be building the airport and the roads in St. Croix? And why are they doing the same in Jamaica and Haiti and virtually every population center in the Caribbean? Also true in South America. Again, this is our hemisphere, which for more than 200 years, we've said explicitly, we will not allow, world powers from across the oceans to control, anything of meaning in our hemisphere. And yet they are. And this is being completely ignored. I never heard anybody mention it. I've just noticed it from traveling a lot. So I would just start there and say, what is this about? Maybe it's totally benign that they're building the infrastructure in Bolivia. Maybe it's not.
It's like, that conversation really says a lot. I mean, because they really see this. So the question should really be asked, why didn't America provides infrastructure and went in to build the economic engagement the way that China has done. In a way, China is stepping into a vacuum because there was need for infrastructure, there was need for economic development, but these things that weren't seen as profitable venues for many of the multinationals. They're not interested in those things. Whereas China is investing for long term because they understand you to build the roads, build the ports, build the infrastructure that increase the trade. And with the rising profile of China as emergence as the global trading nation, that benefits China because China can sell more products.
When it comes to the influence of China outside its borders, I have to say, firstly, it's quite remarkable that they don't seem to have any military ambitions. Secondly, Africa. I'll give you an example, a specific example. Ethiopia. 2004, because I happened to be there and I have some first-hand experience of it. They went into Ethiopia. I'll tell you why they went into Ethiopia, because they suspected there was oil. Because China is a major industrial power, but it lacks primary resources. Now, instead of going into Africa with troops, colonially, destroying the country, killing people like the West has done for the last 100 years, what they did was they went to Addis Ababa and they said to the government, we would like, we can see you have problems with your infrastructure. We would like to build some new airports, upgrade your railway system, create a telephone system, and rebuild your roads. And we'll do this all for free. No strings attached. We don't want anything from you. And they did. Why did they do it? Because it's soft power. Because because they knew that if oil is discovered, and it was discovered later, then, of course, the Ethiopian government will be much more open to Chinese oil companies coming there. They have never combined their investment with imperialistic
services.
You make your neighbor wealthy, then you can sell them things because they have money. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's not how U.S. companies work because U.S. companies focus on the quarter earning reports. they're trying to make it look good for this quarter so their stocks can go up. And again, it's the same short-term thinking as the U.S. politicians. And so. I think this is why a lot of the people in the global south there have high hopes for the BRICS because they're tired of the same old IMF and World Bank domination of their economy, the real debt traps, and they're looking for alternative.
Well, I have a two-part question. The first part is, are we already in a multipolar world now, or is that something that we're going to come to?
Well, I will quote someone far more knowledgeable and far more qualified than I am. That's U.S. professor John Mearsheimer. He was asked the same question recently, and he said, yes, we're in a multipolar world right now. I think that's obvious. U.S. is waging a proxy war against Russia in Ukraine at the moment, and it's not winning. Despite the $1 trillion spending on the military budget, despite the combined might of NATO, the Russian industrial production is outproducing all of them right now. I mean, it kind of showed when measuring your GDP in nominal dollars sometimes does not reflect the real strength of your economy. You can have $1 trillion military budget, but what does that really get you? It's obvious. Apparently, it's not getting you the 155 millimeter artillery shell that Ukraine needs because U.S. has decided to phase out artillery shell production because there was not too much profit in it. The U.S. military industrial complex find more profit, more margins, and more kickbacks in high-tech boondaggles like F-35. There's more grease for all around than really mundane stuff like artillery shell production. So, but yet they can't, ramp it up fast enough just to feed the war machine in Ukraine. And then you have what U.S. is U.S. full backing of Israel in Palestine. This is cratering the U.S. soft power all over the globe.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
The United
it's
States images never look so bad. I mean, I was one of those people in 2003, 2004 saying this war in Iraq is illegal, but it didn't destroy the US image abroad, even though it did for a lot of people. For millions of people, it did. But there's nothing like this ever in my lifetime that has affected the US image abroad as bad as the United States military support for ongoing war crimes.
Yeah, I mean, back in 2003, people can still make the excuse, oh, that's just George W. Bush. He's one-time wacko, right? And now I mean, that rehabilitated. The U.S. mainstream media has rehabilitated George W. Bush just to because during the Trump presidency, just because Bush wasn't, was against Trump. So I mean, like now we're at Biden. There's no more excuse, and we are in the internet age now. Like people, it's a lot harder for Washington to control the narrative to just like domination of the airwave on TV. People now get their news on the internet. They can log on X. They can see in real
Everyone's
time.
got phones and video cameras everywhere in every country, even in the underdeveloped world. So yeah, I mean, and it's the things that are being destroyed. When the United States accidentally bombed a hospital in Afghanistan, you heard about that. I mean, people were like, "Oh, it was an accident or whatever." The independent, but now it's just like constantly hospital, hospital, hospital. Okay, this is not an accident.
Yeah, the recent killing of the WCK, the World's Kitchen,
Right. Yeah.
the UN aid worker. You can see the videos of them providing food for Palestinians one moment, and the next moment you saw their bodies laying out. I mean that has a huge emotional impact, and so U.S. is very fastly depleting its prestige, its soft power. It has built up since World War II, and now it's trying. I mean, this is. I think this one of the reasons why in the recent survey that shows most of the Southeast nations would rather side with China and with the United States because they can see what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in the Middle East, and they saw that U.S. is in fact not a force for stability. In fact, U.S. is destabilizing all across the world, and they rather just trade with China and be left alone. And this is this is one thing that I wish sensible U.S. decision makers, could take page from China's non-interference policy.
Yeah.
U.S. has incredible resources. It's blessed with a geographic location being bounded by two oceans. Its homeland is incredibly secure. If U.S. just focuses on own internal development, the possibility is limitless. I mean, the United States still one of the world's richest countries. I mean, it has a lot of resources. Yet it decides to blow everything away in wars across the world, which makes it incredibly unpopular. So yeah, we are definitely a multi-world today, multi-world.
Well, I mean, my next question, I think you answered. My last question for you was going to be, what better policy should the U.S. pursue than the policies that it seems to be pursuing now? And I think what you've said is basically, the United States should engage in helping develop countries around the world, develop markets around the world, stop destabilizing other countries, protect its, develop itself. I agree. I think I'm a U.S. citizen. I think we waste too much on the military. Now, and not that we don't need it. I also don't think we need to mothball our military. I think we just need to, we have what, 851 bases abroad, something like that. I'm okay with having 50 abroad, like just critical locations to refuel things and stuff. Bring everyone else home. Let's rebuild our economy. Let's build some rail. Let's, educate our kids better. Let's help people pay for school. Let's, for people who are out of work, let's give them technical skills and, do what some China has done with its poverty alleviation. I know that the poverty lines are different, but we could still help our poor people anyway without, saying, oh, well, our poverty line's much higher. There's nothing we can do about it. We have like 1 million homeless people. They say it's 650,000. Everyone knows those numbers are fudged. And, if we spent more of our resources developing ourselves, educating ourselves, and helping other developing countries, not only would we have goodwill, we would have better trade, and it would be a better long-term strategy. Would you like to add anything to that? Last thoughts?
I agree. Just gave up the empire. I mean, you just give up the empire and develop the republic. That's would make U.S. a much great. I mean, he's a shining city on the hill by example, not by trying to impose, your proxies into the people of the world. People don't like that, I think U.S. just cut out all the foreign interventions. That fact by itself would kind of boost the U.S. prestige by quite a bit, because U.S. still have quite a bit of a soft powers through like Hollywood and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Carl Jha. You can find Carl Jha on X and on YouTube at Carl Jha, CarlZha. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jason. My pleasure.